All right, everyone, we are live. Welcome once again to the Engineering Evolved podcast, episode 11. Pawel, we're fully into the double digits now, and now we get to start to realize what's working and what's not. Welcome to the Engineering Evolved podcast, episode 11. Today's topic is the presence of presence, meditation. Pawel, so I've got a fun little test for you. You ready?
Go for it.
All right, so just answer the questions that come to your brain, right? What do you put in a toaster?
Bread.
Okay. Now I want you to say silk 5 times.
Silk, 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 silk.
All right. How do you spell silk?
S-I-L-K.
Okay. And then what do cows drink?
Water. I know
Right.
those.
Now,
I know
you
those.
caught that, right? Right. But if you're playing along, if you were going along with us, most people, many people say milk, even though they know they know the answer is water. Many people say milk. All right, Christian, we have a first. Christian is watching and joining us today live, so I'm super happy to see that. Christian, put in the comments whether or not you said milk or water for what cows drink. This is something that I've seen before, but one of my friends, Wilhelm, shared with us in small cows drink milk. Okay, this is true. Tiny baby cows do drink baby cow milk, so there is an accuracy there. But generally, people say milk, even though most cows drink water. And what it is your brain has these patterns, right? In the after effect, given anything more than 2 or 3 seconds, most people would respond water because cows do drink water. But your brain has these patterns. It has its grooves. And what it demonstrates is that in that gap, if you can lengthen the gap, if you can lengthen the time between stimulus, question, and response, and expand that, and give yourself the time and the presence to be able to actually process, then you have a better chance of responding as Pawel does and did with the correct answer, right? And it's this space. This space here is some of the most valuable space that you can have and that you can create. Now, Pawel, maybe the title of the podcast this week gives it away, but what do you think one of the tools that you can use in order to give yourself the power to expand this space is? And what do you think that space could be called?
I would definitely say presence, perhaps.
Yeah.
So just being aware of what's around you and being aware of what's happening. I would say, just to extend what you said, is our brain has to process a lot of information unwillingly. There are like thousands of informations that come to us every second. And we consciously cannot filter all of that out. So our brain is doing all of that for us. Therefore, it's also very important to be aware of what we are kind of focusing on. Yeah. So like, let's say we have a podcast right now. I know I'm kind of extending your question, but if we have a podcast right now, and I'll be focused on something else, that means I cannot put the full attention because my brain is still processing something else, right? So
right.
that presence, and probably the topic of the presentation that we're trying to get to is very important for everybody. And being aware of what's happening and just being here at the moment, even though, let's say, podcast, let's say you're dealing with your family, it's very important. So that's why we're getting into that topic.
Absolutely. Now, being here on the podcast, being here present in the room and with the camera and paying attention to what each other says is super important, right? If I decided that in today's podcast, I'm going to let Pawel talk for a second, and I'm going to grab my phone and come down here and play a little bit of a video game that I have on my phone, right? That lack of presence is obvious. Like it's so crystal clear when people are present versus not present. And yet so many people don't know how to increase presence, are seemingly unaware of whether they're present or not in a situation. And for a lot of people, they don't even know, like, if they're not problem aware, if they're not aware that they're not present, that's one problem aware. But a lot of people are aware of the issue, but they don't actually know how to fix it. This was engineer Brandon for a really long time. I couldn't figure out how to stay in a situation, right? Now, I had a label that fit, and I'm not trying to poke the bear here, but I had a label that fit that I fully relied on, and it was that I was ADHD, right? I was neurodiverse, and I am. I am a neurodiverse individual. I have been diagnosed with ADHD, but I would fall back on I'm ADHD, therefore I can't focus and pay attention. And I let myself give myself the excuse that because of that diagnosis, it was okay that I wasn't present, and it was just something I was stuck with, right? In retrospect, do you think that that really would work for me in terms of my long-term growth, Pavel?
Probably not.
No. Now, I'm not saying that everybody with ADHD is playing victim or doing it like that's not where I'm going. I'm talking about my experience, my world. I gave myself permission to say, because of this thing over here, I don't have to be present. I'm not required to stay present or work on my presence. And I was somewhere along the lines of not quite problem aware and definitely not solution aware. So introduce into my life this act and this idea of meditation. Now, I have a client right now who's learning to meditate, and it's fun because I'm experiencing vicariously through him the act of learning to meditate, right? Pavel, you've said you meditated a little bit, but it's not like a daily practice for you, right? Like, can you share kind of where you're at in your meditation practice, how much you've done, whether it's active, how long it's been? Like, just I'd love to have a conversation about where you're at and like what your experience with meditation has been, and then what you thought of it like before starting to now.
So maybe I will start with some of the obstacles that I took step upon when trying to meditate. And I think number one was at the beginning, I was not fully aware what the state of meditation is. And second of all, I think I got this misconception that getting into the meditation state and meditating is a process that takes a lot of time. So I was always thinking that meditation only occurs when you're like 100% disconnected, 100% on the flow, and you really have to be like in that specific state.
Right.
So the first thing that kind of knocked me off was like, okay, probably I need to spend like half an hour on an hour trying to do that, which is not a true statement. Like
Correct.
you can do it much faster.
Yep.
I'm sure we're going to talk about this. Second thing was nobody ever like kind of explained to me. So we're engineers, so sometimes I like to understand how thing works. So like nobody really told me like, hey, what meditation is, like what do I understand by the means of, okay, I am meditating now, or I'm performing that action. Like I was just not aware what does it mean. So I was trying to chase something that I was not aware how it works. So I don't know if you remember, like in the episode that we talked about being fit, I mentioned like I don't really like going to the gym unless like there was a reason. And the reason for me was like, okay, I like the calisthenics because that gave me like a purpose. I knew where I was going. So I stumbled upon the same issue that I was just not aware of what is the final goal of the meditation. So then finally, when I started practicing it, I started doing it, but there was one more thing. That was I was not present. So like my brain was constantly thinking, and I was back then. It was very hard for me to disconnect and actually enter that state and actually focus on the meditation.
Right.
And again, this is like a misconception because focusing on meditation is not necessarily meditating.
Right.
So that was all of the issues that I stumbled upon. And Christian, I see that also asked us, can we tell him how to meditate in a few words? I think it's just for me being present at the moment. So basically, right. Let's say you come back from work, or maybe I'll give you an example. What does it mean for me? Let's say you come back from the work, right? You had a bad day at work, and you need to have conversation with your family or friends. So let's call a meditation state the moment that you come to home and you relax. So you close the door and like you take off a jacket, and that jacket is all of the baggage that you had, that you carry out from the work, all of the stress, all of the problems. So if you want to enter the good state, in my opinion, is taking off the jacket, hanging it somewhere, then you walk into the room, and all of the bad feelings, all of the memories, all of the whatever happened at work stays with that jacket for now. And then you're entering to a room where your wife is, where your family is, and you want to have a conversation with them. So if you're not fully disconnected from the work, and you are not aware that you're back home, you're in a safe environment, and you feel just like open-minded and like happy that you're at the moment, I think this would be kind of a meditation for me. So the moment that I don't have to think about what I'm doing. So the moment I stop thinking, that's something for me where I'm like, I'm just natural and I'm just being myself. I think this is the moment where I meditate. That would be my definition. What do you think, Brandon?
Well, so it's interesting because what you touch upon is actually one of the things that threw me off that I've heard from multiple people, right? Because as an engineer, as a thought worker, as a technical person, when you tell someone to not think, the immediate objection is like, you've got to be kidding me. That's not possible, right? And so, I don't actually think that meditating is not thinking. I mean, I do. I think it's disconnecting from that active thought and being aware. I think it's just, it's not actively driving the thought, right? So I've had deep meditation sessions where I've actually thought through and processed and really gone there where I'm having a guided meditation experience. And I've had ones where I fully drop in and I let go. Like it's like a sleep. I go somewhere else, but then there's a full range. I think there's a lot of mystery around meditation. I think a lot of it is just what people think it is. Meditation, when we talk about presence, there's another word that is super vague. So I want to share a couple examples of how I think people meditate or find meditative acts in their everyday life, right? So Pawel, I don't know if you ever smoked cigarettes, but I did for a long time. Look at someone who goes out and smokes a cigarette, right? You light up a cigarette, you take a big puff of air, take a big old drag, and there's a moment there, right? What are you doing when you go, I don't support smoking as a healthy activity in any way, shape, or form. I'm so glad I quit. But that act in and of itself is actually a lot of people going and having a meditative experience because you're taking a pause from what you're doing. You're stepping outside and you're focusing on breath. There's a moment when the nicotine goes in and it hits your lungs, your brain clears, you disconnect a little bit, and you just experience what it is to be in your body in that moment, right?
Yeah.
Now, is smoking good for you? No, but that act is so attractive because I think it touches the natural instinct for us as humans to be meditative in a state, in a moment. It lets us disconnect, go. How many times, I can tell you how many times, countless, I would go outside, smoke a cigarette to think about a problem and process and take myself out of the situation, come over here, do this thing that lets me kind of process in the background and get out of the big thing and just be in the now, be in the moment. And then I come back and I'm going. So that's one thing. Two, another act is people who are like eating and food, right? I can remember the first time I tried Thai food, right? It was at college and I went to this place called Toys Thai. It was across the street from the university, Colorado State University. They had this fantastic lunch buffet. We would always go either Tuesdays or Thursdays. And I tried this vegetarian egg roll dipped in the sauce and I put it in my mouth. I can remember the taste of it, right? And so we would go and you hear these people who talk about like foodies where you put something in your mouth and everything else falls away and you're focused intently on your body, your physical vessels, experience of what is happening in the moment, right? Again, like I can make an argument that's meditative act. So let's come from that point, that standpoint, right? Most meditation practices, if you've never tried meditation before, most practices will start with what?
You mean like the process itself?
Like a beginner. Let's say your very first time you're sitting down to meditate. Almost every practice I've ever heard of says, as a beginner, we're going to just focus on the breath, right? You're gonna breathe in and you're gonna breathe in And as you breathe in, you're going to say 99. And then as you breathe out, you're going to count down to 98. So you're going to count backwards from 9 with breath in and out. And if you lose count, just start over again. And you're going to focus on your breath. What is it doing? It's training you, because it's a skill. It's training you to pull your attention from everything that's going on in the outside and focus on just what's happening in the moment. I don't know that I've ever fully successfully counted down backwards from 100 to 1. Like, I lose track. I'll go somewhere and then I'll recognize that I'm off and wandering, and then I'll pull it back in. Okay, time to go again, right? So like, that's where most people start with meditation. Like, they have a lot of teachers on different apps and everything else, but it comes down to breath. It comes down to being present and being aware of the experience you're having. And being present in that moment actually forces you, requires you to let go of everything that's happening in the past, the future, and just focus on what's happening now, right? Mm-hmm. Being present in the moment, right? So like when Christian talks about, can you tell us how to meditate in a few words? There's a lot of different ways. I think it's more important to people to recognize what a meditative act could be and then see how they do it. And then you can focus on it. So when I talk about that, like, what comes up for you with like the meditative acts?
I wanted to add one more thing actually maybe two more things too. One is another example. You said cigarettes, but I would say it's easy for some people to come to kind of this is a bad example, but it's easy to come to a different state, maybe let's call it like this, for some people also when they drink alcohol.
Yep.
Because that disconnects parts of your brain and allows you to think less, like, let's say it in the engineering world. So again, this is also kind of the process of going into the meditation where we disconnect the information that's around us and focus just on ourselves. Like you said, that's why do the breathing, because then we still focus on the breathing at the beginning of the meditation, but we're disconnecting everything that's around us. But the best way to observe like hypnosis and meditation state would be looking at very young kids, because they did not process everything yet. They are not aware of many things that we are, and they don't have to think about as many things. That's why they ask so many questions. That's why they just don't understand why they should or they should not do some things. That's why they are like open to everything. And like, it's very amazing for me when we go like with my wife to our dance practice and we see the kids that are, let's say, 3-4 years old, and they're trying to learn how to dance or how to do something.
Right.
They are present and unpresent at the same time. And this is the state where, like, when I look at them, I'm always like, wow, this is so amazing that they can be so at the moment and like just don't worry about so many things, because right. It's us that are creating the issues around us, right? It's that's our brain that's generating those negative thoughts that we try later to get rid of, like using meditation or something else. So yeah, I just wanted to add those two comments to what you're saying.
Absolutely. Now, and it is, kids are great. One of the most amazing things is when my kids, when they have a temper tantrum or they have a reaction, right? They're just responding to the emotions they're feeling, right? Which we'll talk about that in later things, of just reacting to emotions and everything else. But like, yeah, kids have the capacity to be present and aware of what they're doing. And then we slowly learn to not do that. Christian talks about why our brain cannot focus on breathing, but it does it automatically. So I think that's a fun trick. I think it's a fun game to recognize. It's an autonomic response, right? We breathe, our heart beats. But man, you want to talk about a meditative state, start to focus on the beating of your heart and then throw in some gratitude. It's amazing. Focus on your breath. Recognize the way that you're breathing, right? Breathing is something that we have, that the reason why you focus on breath is exactly what Christian's talking about. We can focus on breathing. We don't have to. And when we do, that forces us into presence. It forces us to be where we're at, right? My meditation practice. So I have a very I have an in-depth practice that I've worked on for a long time. I wake up and every morning I practice for 20 minutes. It's actually I set a clock on a watch on my thing for 22 minutes. I have about a 21-minute song that I listen to every single day. And I have about a minute or two of breathing, of deep breath where I purge. I pull in a lot of oxygen and purge carbon dioxide, just in and out and in and out. And then I breathe it all out and I hold at the bottom with it empty and let the oxygen that I've kind of hyperventilated with. And then I breathe in and then I sit there and I see where it goes. And sometimes it's super connected and visual. Sometimes it's I just drop in and I come out when my alarm goes. Like it's the same practice. And then I work to, and I've been employing and integrating the same 20-minute practice every day at lunch. And I come out refreshed, right? Being aware of and learning to be aware of breathing in the moment is exactly what Christian's talking about. It's requiring you to be present in the moment in the body you're living in.
I think I have a new thought. So referring to the question Christian asked regarding, can you tell us how to meditate in a few words? I think I would say being able to disconnect your conscious brain. So why I'm saying this is exactly the question that Christian asked for the second time. So that is, he says, I wonder why our brain cannot focus on breathing, but it does automatically. So in general, like our brain is divided into quite a few sections, but let's now focus on only conscious and unconscious. So the unconscious brain is the one that controls all of the autonomous function, like breathing, like the heart beating. For example, if a fly will fly in here right now, right? And you don't know about this. This is your unconscious brain that's going to close your eyes or make your hand move, trying to defend. And that's something that we cannot control. This part of the brain is uncontrollable for us.
Yeah.
So that's something we cannot really disconnect. But the conscious one is like, okay, I'm sitting here. I know where the camera is. I know where my light is. I know where my microphone is, and so on and so on. This is the brain that will not allow us to enter that meditative state. So basically, disconnecting that brain or like putting it on pause is the key to the meditation, I would say, if I think about it more deeply. Like, thank you, Christian, for the comments. I think that's how I would define it. I'm
Right.
not 100% sure if that will be an accurate explanation, but that's how I see it.
So that, for me personally, that wanders into this scenario that you get into the more you get into meditative practice, is now where you start to expect an outcome, and that it just starts to combat the actual meditative practice itself, right? Like for me, the simplest answer is always the best. It's working to be aware of what's happening in the present without future or past, right? Now you can have that be your conscious brain. Now here's the fun thing is, let's say I told you to go count your breaths in and out from 100 down, right? You're going to be engaging your conscious brain, but at some point in time, your unconscious brain is going to kick up and it's going to kick you out. You're going to lose track. You're going to wander, right? And then at some point after that, in a timeline, you're going to become aware that you're wandering, and then you pull it back in and you start again, right? So that's one repetition of recognizing that you stepped out of a conscious, your unconscious took over, and you're pulling it back to where you're actually living in your conscious. So like you had talked about letting go or disconnecting from your conscious mind. And I actually, I get what you're saying, but sometimes I think it's actually better. I think it's more poignant to say you're trying to be able to touch base with your conscious mind, to be able to have space to say, okay, Brandon's asking me a question and throwing me a test. What do cows drink? They drink water. You're not just saying, I've got the word silk, which rhymes with milk, and I'm spelling it, which puts another pattern interrupt there. And then what do cows drink? Cows are associated with milk, right? There's another question in there of what color are the clouds in the sky? You could say white. And then I say, what do cows drink? And it's white and then silk and then milk. Like there's a lot of different ways you can get your brain to have that pattern response. But being able to take a pause and go, okay, here's the answer, is being aware and being able to be in that present moment. And so, one of the things that I learned from a mentor when I first started to learn meditation is there is no such thing as a bad meditation, right? The only bad meditation is to not meditate. There are so many different methods. There's mantra-based meditation. There's transcendental meditation. There's, sitting and staring at fire. There's a practice called the clock meditation that I've learned and that I teach. There is a directional meditation. Like, meditation's been around for a really long time. And so I think it's interesting that I'm happy it's starting to come back in and people are recognizing the awareness of it. I didn't think we were going to get all the way through to 30 minutes as quickly. A couple questions that I if people are asking, right? One, how can you start to learn meditating, right? The answer is to start. The internet is full of different things. One of the apps that I use is called Insight Explorer. There's no sponsorship. It's nothing. It's actually a free app. You can have a paid version with courses, but like my current client that I have, he is working through the Insight Explorer Beginner. They're fantastic, but there's things on YouTube. There's different. I mean, it's a beautiful, deep place that you can go look. And so if anybody has questions about where to start, I would say go and explore what Insight Timer has to offer. Two, again, Christian joked, I think I'm bad at meditating. Again, you can't be. If you are working to meditate, you're in the right spot. It's
One
a
more
skill.
thing.
Time.
One more thing I would add to what you're saying. I think when somebody's looking at meditation and they're starting, maybe they try, like, it's YouTube, which is probably the first place that they will go. Just try to type in guided meditation.
Yep.
Because when you type in meditation, sometimes you might not understand what's happening over there, but the guided meditation will actually kind of guide you how to get into that state. And again, just try the short ones. Like, don't try to go for like 30 minutes. Just try the 5 minutes or 7 minutes.
Yeah, 5-minute guided.
Yeah.
5-minute guided meditation for beginners would be a fantastic YouTube search term, right? And so that's that. Now, Pawel, as we speak to the engineering world and the role, and we'll maybe go a couple minutes over today, being present, how is it that being present could impact your career and your day-to-day actions positively? Like, what's the first thing that comes to your mind?
If we talk purely, let's say, about my field, which would be industrial automation, definitely when we talk about people, clear and better communication,
right,
and perhaps more friendly communication, better reception. Now, if we talk about working with a machinery or working with a code, better awareness of what's happening in the code, less likely to crash things, and better quality of the work. I think to make it short, I think I would close on those terms.
Yep. And I'm 100% agreement. In a high pressure situation, the value of being to take a second and go, is this the right answer? Is it this or this? You come to a decision point, and instead of just going with the thing, you take a second, 5 seconds to go, okay, let's go this way or here, or, hey, I'm going to communicate. We're going to ask a question, right? We're in a pressure situation, and there's a lot of people looking at you and asking questions and being able to say, hey, I think it's this or this. And what does somebody like? That awareness of being in the moment is an invaluable skill.
Yeah.
The absence of it is plain to see by anybody,
Exactly.
And it's something that's built over time.
And you have to really train and really start noticing your patterns when you disconnect, when you connect in the conversations, because like you mentioned at the beginning, it might be hard for you to see, but I can guarantee you 100% other people know.
100%. One of the feedbacks I got was the ability to communicate at different levels, technical and non-technical, and be able to handle high stress situation and still maintain presence and communication, right?
Yep.
That's not been a skill of mine. That is not an innate skill. I've had to learn to communicate, and I can attribute 95% of my ability to stay in that situation to my personal development based off of meditation and the ability to process thoughts and emotions, which we'll cover next week. So meditation, the presence of presence in this gift this season. If you have any questions, please reach out to Pawel or I. Would love to provide any more guidance or answer questions. If you have more questions about meditation, put them in the comments below, or go to engineeringevolved.com and submit a question for us to talk about. I could talk a long time about meditation, Pawel. It has been one of the biggest pivots for me in my life, and I have a few of those, but meditation has been fantastic. So, in this season, it's a stressful season. If you've never thought about it, if you've thought about it, but you never pulled the trigger, I urge you to try. There's so many resources available. It costs nothing to sit and breathe for 5 seconds. And I guarantee you, with overtime and concerted practice and effort, you will gain an ability to be more present, which helps everything in your life.
Great. I think that's a great summary of what we talked about today.
Absolutely. Christian says this was really helpful. Thank you guys for talking about it. Absolutely. Meditation is not a mystery. It's an amazing tool. And Christian, if you have any more questions, please reach out. Everyone, have a wonderful evening. Pawel, last words before we do our yet to be defined sign off for here, the Engineering Evolved podcast.
Yeah, guys, stay aware, practice, take a look, and note when you're being received well by others and when you're receiving information from the others. If you're actually there or you're just wobbling around, trying to see, like, okay, maybe I'm doing something on my phone, maybe I'm thinking about going home. See how much this will change the way how you're seen and the way how you're communicating with the others. And try to meditate. Again, don't start 30 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, and see where that gets you.
Absolutely. Episode 11 is signing off. Have a wonderful, happy week. We'll see you here next week. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.